welcome back from that short commercial break. I was still looking at, of course, the Supplier's workshop at, of course, right there at Sheraton Hotel regarding the possible risks that are that are associated that's with the oil and gas sector. Quite a lot is being shared and a lot is being, of course, put there out to ensure that as a participant into the oil and gas sector, you get to understand what really it takes for you to be a part of this very risky sector. Quite so many. And of course, we are heading back to Sheraton to get to review what's really transpiring. And of course, we are still right here to give you the live commentary regarding transparent sharing analysis and giving opinions regarding what is being shared there.
Contracts where you're not paid attention to your obligations under the contracts. The other party, in most cases, we have clauses where the other party has a right to bring a claim against you, either to cause you to perform or cause you to pay a certain amount because of non-obligation or non-fulfillment of. It is good to realize the risk right from the start. It is good to act on the risk and then to implement your mitigation measures as soon as possible without letting the dispute risk escalate to incur you a very high cost. So having discussed what the three Having discussed what the three major legal risks are, and that is our contract risk, that is our compliance risk, and the dispute risk, I just want to talk about what can we do today to reduce these kinds of legal risk. So on contract risk, and I'll just go off book. On contract risk, I really encourage you, as you get into the sector, to get these kinds of contracts, study the contract carefully, identify the potential risks. What normally happens is we get excited, which is a good thing. You get excited, you've got a contract, you want to immediately sign with this person and then start performing. But take time to identify what is this contract, what is this relationship that I'm getting into, what kinds of risks are there, and how can I reduce these risks. Some of the risks that could be there, for example, what is the start date of this contract? What am I supposed to perform? What are my payment obligations? What are the timelines? What are my duties? And what am I maybe providing? What am I serving? What is my service on the other side? So understand the contract before you get into it. Understand the risk. And what are those kinds of mitigations that you can put in place before you get into that contract? Then negotiate that contract, well knowing about the risks that are there. Include clauses that mitigate that risk. Some of the clauses can include warranties. Warranties are undertakings, and these are promises from the other party that some of the things that they're talking about in the contracts are true. So include those warranties so that you have a backup to know that this person is actually telling me, what is actually true and what I'm going to expect in the contract. And you can also include indemnities. Indemnities help you to spread the risk to the other party. In case maybe the warranty that they're giving you turns out to be a lie, in case it is false, the other party can indemnify you for that particular loss that you might be facing. So there you're spreading the risk and you're mitigating the contractual risk. You can also include insurance clauses, and insurance basically helps us again to spread the risk, and that's how we mitigate risk. You pass the risk to the insurance company. So that is a way of mitigating. And then there's also limitation of liability. In some of the contracts, some of the mitigation measures is that you can limit the liabilities that can be borne by you as a party to a contract. You can say, for example, for ABC, I'll be liable, but for XYZ, that kind of liability has to lie with you as the other part of the contract. So include some of these clauses in the contract to help you mitigate the risks that you have carefully identified. And then regularly monitor the contract. If you have obligations under that contract, if there are timelines under the contract, monitor the contract. Often at times we sign off and then we start performing, but no one is looking at the contract to see what is the contract saying. What clause am I supposed to, what clause stipulates my duties, what are my obligations, what are my timelines? No one is checking. So if no one is checking, that means some things might fall through the cracks, and you don't want that to happen, because once that happens, the contractual risk will fall in, and then the effects that we have talked about, the financial loss, the loss of business, the reputation, all that will fall in, and you don't want that to happen. So regularly monitor your contracts. What I'm talking about there is also you can seek legal advice when you're drafting these contracts, and this minimizes contract risks. I am not seeking business here, but I think it is important for everyone to have a lawyer, have a legal person look at that contract. Just that's also a way of mitigating. You're spreading the risk to your counsel, because at the end of the day, maybe you can hold your counsel liable. You can hold them to account to say that, you see, you okayed this to sign this off. You need to maybe bear with me this financial loss. But at the end of the day, you are minimizing the risk if you seek legal counsel to look at some of these contracts. Lastly, you can adopt good contract practices and contract management, regularly monitor the contracts and obligations. I have already spoken about that. Please monitor the contracts. I've dealt a lot there because of regulatory compliance. Our regulator really delved so much into it. But on surface level, I will say that it is important to understand the specific laws and regulations, rules, policies, and standards that apply to the business. Then after understanding them, strictly adhere to them in order to avoid the penalties or the litigation. Then implement the specific policies and the procedures that will help you ensure that your company or your business is compliant to the laws and the regulations. And then monitor the legal and regulatory developments that are applicable to your business. How can you do this? You might ask me. You can monitor through looking at the websites. You can monitor through attending these kinds of conferences, because here we'll be able to give you some of this information, some of the laws and the regulations that are coming out that are going to affect your business. So monitor the legal and regulatory developments that are applicable to your business. And then regularly have compliance health checks to ensure that you're compliant. So these health checks are basically like how you go to the doctor to see, am I okay? And then they okay you. Self-assess your company. What are the licenses that I have? What are the contracts that I have? What are some of the obligations that I'm supposed to put in place in maybe these contracts? What are the conditions that are coming with this license? Am I complying with these conditions? That is the self-assessment. That is the health check that we're talking about it. Be regular about it. Is it quarterly? Is it biannual? Is it annual? Is it half yearly? But monitor at the end of the day. Then for dispute risk, it is important to have a well-drafted contract in place that can optimally allocate the risk and precisely describe the rights and obligations. And we have dealt so much in contract risk. So draft your contracts well. If you're not sure about something, you can run it by your legal counsel so that they can give you advice or an opinion on it. Then conduct a merit assessment in the event a dispute happens. You can conduct a cost-benefit analysis. Is it a dispute that I really need to go and litigate about, or is it something that I can sit down and amicably settle? Because ultimately, amicably settle, there's so many. You're saving. Ultimately, you're saving on the company, you're saving on the business, you're saving on its reputation. So you do that court vis-a-vis amicable settlement analysis. Then appoint a counsel in the event that a business elects to proceed to court, and do it immediately. Let them give you a legal opinion. Let them know let them know what let them know the strengths and the weaknesses of your case. Again, do that cost-benefit analysis and appoint a counsel to help you through the process of litigation. So, lastly, I just want to say generally, in terms of all these risks, in terms of legal risk, contract, compliance, dispute, you can take out insurance covers. Where you see that there is a potential risk, take out an insurance cover for those identified risks. And as I've said, insurance will help you spread the risk. In case it arises, at the end of the day, you have a backup. Someone else can actually take on that financial risk. You're spreading the risk. Have good corporate governance practices which promote business ethics. Enter into joint venture arrangements, and those will help you spread the risk amongst the two businesses. And then appoint a risk officer or a compliance officer to monitor the different sources of risk. Now, these are general. These cut across all the different types of risks. Is it financial? Is it operational? Is it legal? All these can apply as mitigation measures. And maybe lastly, it is always important to first of all understand what the legal risks are, understand the business, understand what you're getting into. After you've understood it, sit down and identify, and then you do a cost-benefit analysis. If it's a contract that is it's going to give you a very heavy obligation, maybe to perform, and maybe you're unable to perform, or it's going to strain your company, do a cost-benefit analysis to understand what that risk means. And once you've understood it, what are some of those mitigation measures that you can put in place in order to spread that risk? If you're not spreading it and you're taking it on, how can you reduce it? And if you don't want to reduce it, how can you eliminate it altogether? So that's the cost-benefit analysis that I'm looking at. So ultimately, that's how I want to end, by encouraging you to join the sector, but even as you do, get to know what the legal risks are and how can you mitigate them. Thank you so much.
Smart Business is still here with you till the workshop is done, so make sure that you stay with us. We are still at the Kampala Sheraton Hotel, and we are taking a look at the oil and gas sector.
Exactly.
And the risks that are involved, and the
mitigation measures.
The mitigation measures. I've seen the legal officer from Uganda National Oil Company, that is How Kenya, trying to help the suppliers, especially with how to mitigate some of these risks, how to identify these risks. And the major thing that she pointed that I picked out most was insurance. Insurance. Something that Ugandans have not really received properly. Yes. According to the findings, it was a FinScope survey that was conducted in 2018, showed that formal insurance uptake in Uganda was at 1%. Okay. Just 1%. And then the current insurance penetration in Uganda is also estimated at 1%. Okay. So between 2018 and now, we are still at 1%. Now, these low levels of insurance uptake are attributed to public mistrust, mistrust for starters, and then low public awareness and narrow insurance product range, especially for low-income earners. And I would definitely agree with this one, because when you look at most of these insurance companies, the beginning package is at, I think minimum is like 50,000. And when you look at the biggest population in Uganda, 50,000, they wouldn't put it on insurance. Usually because there is the fact that they are not aware of
the potential benefits of
insurance. Yes. So because of that, you find that these individuals are not ready for this.
You know, looking up to this, despite the ignorance that is portrayed out there, that can never really be an excuse for why somebody shouldn't embrace it. There comes a scenario whereby you have no option, but you have to do this. Of course, the previous speaker was addressing the fact of mitigating the risks, and she mentioned quite lots of steps. Of course, one of them was about have a legal personnel to review your contract. Of course, implementing specific strategies to ensure that your compliance is really up to date and up to standard to avoid the possible, of course, penalties that you may inquire. But then, when you look through all this, somebody out there may say this is too much. Probably they might feel like I might need to have a team of people to help me execute all this.
Well, it's an investment.
It's an investment, very true. But now I'm talking to a Ugandan who wants to say, because you talked about 50,000. And how many Ugandans are willing to put that? But then
for insurance.
For insurance.
Yes.
But then look, all this money, because these are people, this is human labor you're employing here, and you're not going to give them 50,000. So don't you see that insurance now turns out to be the cheapest option? Okay, for Ugandan who wants the shortcut to all this, to feel they feel like they cannot really take up to this, probably they would prefer an insurance to cover up for them.
Well, whether you employ people or not, the truth is you're going to have insurance covers for various reasons. Reasons like there is on the legal side, like she put it, at a point even the legal advice you're getting may not be enough. Even the legal personnel, Kimo herself might advise you to go for insurance.
So
yes.
Definitely at all costs, insurance is
everything.
So can we say, like how the previous speaker said from the Petroleum Authority Uganda, linkages, of course, can we say that the oil and gas sector might boost that 1% probably of insurance uptake? Because
I pray it does. I pray it does, because we have not given it as much attention as we have done now. Uptake for formal insurance was on 6% in Kenya.
6%.
I'm hoping difference of 5%, and 9% in Rwanda, and 15% in Tanzania. Now these are people who know how to secure themselves. Because insurance is a form of securing yourself. Definitely. And this means that the uptake of formal insurance in Uganda is the lowest in the region.
Okay.
In the region, because Rwanda at 9%, Tanzania at 15%, Kenya at 9%. Kenya at 6%. 6%. Yeah. You get to realize that we have a lot of work to do. I think even the insurance sector itself has a lot of work to do to sell itself to the Ugandans to understand. But anyone who wants to join the oil and gas sector, the risks involved are quite many. And quite heavy. So by all means, you might want to think about insurance. It's unavoidable. This is the point. This is what I was telling Sonko yesterday, that at a point it's going to be inevitable not to have a certain form of insurance somewhere. If you are a business owner, if it's a building, you might want to insure it, because you don't know, there could be a fire outbreak.
Exactly.
If you're in transportation, that car could be stolen, anything could happen.
Anything can happen.
So you might want to think about insurance as a way of mitigating some of these risks. And well, many thanks to the Uganda National Oil Company for holding these conversations and bringing reality to the people, and putting the truth on the table. That this is a very risky venture, but you can mitigate some of the risks. Plus, we all know that business is about taking risks.
But so quite lots of course initiatives are being put in place to equip Ugandans. But my question now comes back: how is the response? I mean, trying to find out how, because now it comes back to a private individual on how you're going to perceive a certain matter, and this would be very essential for Ugandans in such a time to have what we call a mindset change, because I believe it could be one of the key factors that probably are hindering us to really progress. Because 2025 is not far.
Yeah, it's not very far.
25, and when we see amounts of what is done, it's being done for the normal Ugandan, or what we call a Muntu Wawansi, to find out they can benefit. But now the question comes back: the intake. How do we perceive this? And she mentioned about attendance of these conferences, because this is not the first of its kind. Many are being held, and also other contractors are holding other conferences to see the participants in that value chain, how best they can really be acquainted with the required knowledge to participate in the oil and gas sector. I would really urge Ugandans to really be a part of these conferences and really get this information.
Well, if you are someone that is interested, then you've got to know that you have to do whatever it takes. Whatever it takes to get into that business and have it working properly.
Exactly.
And the problem is most Ugandans, and I've noticed this, we don't equip ourselves with the necessary knowledge to be able to execute, to put ourselves in a place where we are on the side that is, we're not losing so much. We're supposed to attain as much information. We're supposed to seek so much knowledge, but we do not.
Yeah.
We enter a field and we're not looking for who are the people that we can benchmark on, who can we consult, who can advise legally and in all other ways.
Exactly.
Well, we are still here with you, and we are hoping that this is very beneficial for you who wants to be part of the oil and gas sector. There is the Q&A session taking place right now at the Kampala Sheraton Hotel. You might want to find out what is being asked and what are the answers. So let's take a look and see what is going on that side, and hopefully some of your questions will be answered, especially because if you're interested, usually the questions do not differ, and if they differ, you know what to do. You can reach out to Unoc and you'll get every single answer of yours. But for now, let's see what is happening at Sheraton and the questions and the answers that we can get for now.
Thank you very much. Jeremy, I think you have something there, but also anybody who would like to add value. Next.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Edward Desmond, and I represent Continental Logistics. So I have about 6 questions on the risk topic that was talked about. So first question is, who owns the top risks and who is accountable for them, and whom do they report to? Then number 2 would be, how often does the company refresh its assessment on the top risks?
Kindly repeat the last one. I think we didn't hear you properly.
It was, how often does the company refresh its assessment on the top risks? And then question number 3 is, how effective is the company in managing the top risk? And are there any organization blind spots warranting attention for the cause? And then, how will you monitor the 1,400 plus kilometer pipeline? Because you've seen incidents of the Makando well that happened in Mexico, and there was a loss of over 4.9 million barrels of oil. And then, does the company understand that the assumption underlying its strategy and its competitive intelligence process to monitor external factors for change that could be about those assumptions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I would request that you kindly share your questions with me so I can have them allocated.
Thank you very much. I am Edward Kabongwa from ANS Investments. ANS Investments were a leading company in fire safety. However, I do other things. I teach at the university. I have one question for Unoc and UPA. My question to you is, are these Unoc and UPA capacity building meetings and information sharing meetings only ring-fenced for Kampala region? I have not had any outside Kampala where I deliver this kind of information. Number 2, I've appreciated the lawyer's presentation, and it seems you're only involving in regulatory and financial risks within the oil and gas sector. But my question is, when are we broadening our risk presentation to involve the emerging cultural risks in the oil region? I am from Chenjojo. We are seeing so many new faces, both in color, in size, and when they are there, they are a total risk to the local population. When are we discussing those other emerging risks, including the natural risks, which are likely to be or happen in this era when Uganda is becoming an oil country? Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'll ask PAU and Ministry of Energy to respond to that. And how are the legal question? We can have two more, one there and, okay, there's one behind you. So the others will respond to them for the next Q&A as we are running behind time, but you can write your questions, give them to Lillian, and she passes them on, please.
Yes, good morning, colleagues. First of all, I would like to thank today's presenters. It has been a wonderful presentation. My name is Suna Rene. I'm from Buyer Safety and Security Limited. We deal in supply of personal protective equipment and security gears. Yes, my question is in regards to the last presentation by Howard Kenya from Legal Department, Unoc. She talked about making sure that the companies are compliant with all the laws and regulations to be able to avoid risk in regards to penalties and whatnot. So the second presenter, Peter Kenneth, talked of looking at getting accreditation and qualification by companies set up here to attain certain certification and standards. I would like to get more guidance on how the local companies can access these international standards and be able to get accredited to be able to comply with the laws and regulations in regards to being able to access the opportunities to supply to the company.
Okay, Kenneth, and we have one more, and then we'll respond to those.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Nizemana Gilbert from Medical Uganda Limited, and we deal in medical supplies. Now, we've looked at risks and then challenges, and my question is, now when it comes to contract, we have these challenges that providers will face, and they will just happen. So they didn't foresee them, and they will happen to make like delays in executing the contract. So as as a purchaser, how far are you willing to go to tolerate such providers in case of delays? And then the other question is, in case of financial crisis like what happened last year, no, in 2020 due to COVID, how much are you willing to help these providers facing the financial challenges? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think you can take the microphone to Dr. Loida to respond first, and then we can go around. Please feel free to respond to all the other questions as you deem fit.
Thank you, Paul. The question from Paul of G&G Skills was talking about the Ministry of Finance looking for monies to finance the economy and asking if the Unoc has plans to raise finances from the economy. Thank you, Paul, for that question. I would like to refer you to the sector governance in the oil and gas sector in the country, where Unoc is responsible for commercial aspects, the PAU for regulatory, and the Ministry of Finance that is responsible for the monies that are required and other fiscal aspects. Much as the Unoc is financing the projects, but what is important is concentration on the mandate and ensuring that they give priority to delivering on the mandate. And Unoc works in consultation with the Ministry of Energy to ensure that the required financing for the different projects is derived or achieved. So in this case, we will have to refer your question to the Ministry of Finance to provide the much needed solutions or answers so that they can be addressed. Just a little bit on the tree planting related to the sector and on the production. Definitely Unoc is cognizant of the changing trends globally, and these have changed the markets for the oil and gas, and the changes as a result of environmental aspects and technological advancement. So cognizant of that,
Unoc as a leader in oil and gas business in the country, we are putting in place ways in which we can reduce the greenhouse gases during the production. And as such, one of the measures that we are considering is trading in carbon. And one of the things is tree planting, which has already started way before production is done. And this will be done to ensure that we get to either net zero or we reduce the carbon emissions. But Sarah will work on, will respond to how many trees we have planted, but it's already in place, and we are looking at offsetting the carbon emissions and reducing them to acceptable numbers.
Thank you, Loida, for taking that. Just for specifics, we have so far planted 100 trees in partnership with Uganda Petroleum Institute at Chigumba. That we started, and we will plant more. But our plan has 40 million trees. We are in partnership there with the Church of Uganda and National Forest Authority. 40 million trees, yes. Thank you.
I'll try to stand. We had a question from Ankunda, and the issue was lack of information to those persons with disabilities. We would like to say we are starting that process, and as you see, we have been able to invite them to this workshop to ensure that they also benefit from some of this information we're sharing. But it's a journey. It's not a one-day event. I know there will be something we'll have to work on with the team to see how we can be able to gather them and be able to share some of this information. So it's a journey that we are working on. The other two questions were from Paul. Paul raised an issue in regards to agriculture. As the backbone of Uganda, despite the oil and gas, if I got you right, I think that was the issue. We know that that is important, and we have partnered with Stanbic Bank in this regard. We have come up with a program, an agricultural development program, that is aiming at looking at the different counties in Bunyoro where the oil is coming from, and we are going to train these people to ensure that they get the relevant skills. Then they will pass on these skills later on to the rest of the people in the community. So there's something being worked on in partnership with Stanbic. We'll share with you additional information in regards to that. The last question that's mine is, how is Unoc building trust with stakeholders? I think coming here is one way in which we are trying to build trust with you. We also invite a number of other stakeholders, like the banks are here, that can offer financing to your companies where you have issues, and also come and share what we are doing as a company and what our regulator is doing. So this is one way in building trust, but also we have so many other ways in terms of our website where we share all the information on what is happening. In regards to procurement, which I head, we make sure we advertise all our tenders to be competitive, and also pass on the information on who has been able to be awarded those tenders. So those are some of the ways we're trying to develop trust with our people. On the ground, we have a lot of initiatives we are carrying out with Bunyoro Kitara Kingdom. There have been a number of engagements with the kingdom in those aspects, and also some partnerships have gone on. But all that information is available. You can be able to pick it up. Thank you.
Thank you so much. There were a number of questions that were to the regulator.
In regards to, there was a question around, Mark Williams noted sometimes because of the timeline, for tenders, the JVs cannot be rushed. Now, I would like to request that when you know, for example, your particular core area, you shouldn't wait until there's an advert. You should try to initiate the JV discussions well beforehand. There's a database of the qualified suppliers. You can be able to go to that qualified list and see what the people who are already registered. Because before you get into a joint venture, both of you need to be registered and able to supply the sector. So ahead of the tenders, look out for potential partners and maybe initiate the discussions. Then, so that at the point when the tenders are there, you've already made headway. That will save you some time and enable you to be able to actually compete. Because even as a joint venture, you have to submit together. And the joint venture agreements also are different in nature. You could do a joint venture for a particular project. So the agreement that you negotiate can be for a specific project that you want to undertake together, and you may not have to create a new incorporated company as a result of a joint venture. So that can be a way you can undertake to see that you don't get to miss out on some of the opportunities. Then Ms. Achako asked about what the NOCTR is. The NOCTR is the National Oil and Gas Talent Register. So that's where if you're an employee who, or a potential employee, someone who has the skills and would like to work in the oil and gas sector, you go and register as a talent so that when the opportunity is, you can be able to advertise. But also if you're an employer, you can use the Oil and Gas Talent Register for recruitment. So you can be able to register as an employer in the National Oil and Gas Talent Register so that when you're looking for staff you want to recruit, you can be able to do it off the system. Then Ms. Ankunda noted that there are businesses for different people with disabilities who would like to participate. I think this is a good start, but as the authority, we are open to an invitation. If you have a forum where as business owners with disabilities, where we can be able to come and guide and support you to register on the National Supplier Database or advise on how you can be able to participate, we will be very interested in coming and giving you support in that forum. Then Desmond noted, inquired about how the monitoring of the pipeline will be done. Maybe I can give a little insight into this. The pipeline will have technology to monitor each and every bit of the pipeline, so that in case of any issue, in case it has been damaged, in case of any element that impacts it or puts it at risk of leaking, immediately teams will be able to get a notification because of the electrical tracking that is going to be part of the pipeline. So that will help to easily monitor the pipeline, how it's performing, and quickly address any risks that come up. Then Mr. Suna asked about opportunities for accreditation. Now, there are a number of opportunities, right from the different oil companies. They're usually calling for enterprises to apply. There are a number of different accreditations. A number of the ones that have come out are related to HSE, health, safety, and environment. So you need to look out and see whenever there's an advert, if you qualify in regards to what specific kind of companies are being requested to apply and express interest, please do. The Petroleum Authority is also in a process of developing certification course for HSE as well, and those adverts should be coming through probably within the next month. So you can always keep an eye out to see what are the opportunities where you can be able to get certified, sponsored by either the Petroleum Authority or the different JV partners. And then there was also the last question from Robert about the delays in contract execution and the level of tolerance. I think different companies will have different ways to handle this, but as a contractor, if you probably foresee that due to certain risks you're likely not to meet your contractual obligations, I think you quickly engage your client to see how you can mitigate those risks. Because if you wait and the delays happen, chances are you'll either get into a point where either you're going to be fined or even have your contract terminated. So you have to proactively see if you're likely not to meet the timelines, quickly engage and offer solutions. That way your contractor or your client can be able to appreciate where you're coming from and then support you to see that you get back on track. Thank you so much.
Peter, before you sit, there's one question from YouTube. This is Jill Winfred. Says, I would like to ask PAU the criteria followed for classifying the companies registered on the NSD.
Okay. So for a company to be classified, there are two options. You're either Ugandan or you're foreign. Now, for you to be classified as Ugandan, we're based on the law. As a Ugandan company, we look at about 4 to 5 areas. First of all, you need to be incorporated, based on the laws of Uganda, so you're incorporated through your Uganda Registration Services Bureau. Then 2, we look at your employment of Ugandans. At least 70% of your staff should be local or Ugandans. So we look at employment of Ugandans, we look at your procurement and use of Ugandan goods and services. So as a company, have you been procuring locally? Have you been doing local purchases? So as to see that you're adhering to buying of locally available goods and services. Then we look at your compliance track record in regards to, are you compliant to the tax laws? Are you compliant to the social security laws? So we look at your pay-as-you-earn returns, we look at your tax returns as well to see that you're compliant. Then we also look at the shareholding. Who are the owners of this particular company? And apart from the shareholding is the management and control within the country. So depending on how you perform across those different areas, we are then able to classify you as either Ugandan or foreign. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kenneth. Lillian, you can ask Minister of Energy to also respond to some questions.
Thank you, Jessica. My name is Brian Achaki Kabalega. I don't know if I need to stand, maybe I should. I'd just like to supplement and then give a few highlights on maybe 2 questions that were raised. One about the inclusiveness issue with regards to persons with disabilities, and then the other about how we are addressing the emerging risks that related to social inclusivity as well. So first with the persons with disabilities, I know that government generally and the Ministry of Energy in particular is interested in having everybody in Uganda included in the oil and gas activities, and emphasis has been on women and youth, but everything that we do also is geared towards having persons with disabilities participating in the sector in any way possible. But a lot of work has been done around women and youth, I must admit. I think we've had only 2 engagements with persons with disabilities, but in the Albertine Graben, I'm not aware of any engagements here in Kampala, but the fact that the persons with disabilities are here today is also very telling. It's a good step forward. The journey is quite long, but I think the steps that are being taken now are in the right direction, and hopefully we shall be able to have the persons with disabilities much more engaged in the oil and gas activities. And I want to speak to the emerging risks related to people coming into the oil and gas bearing regions and then how we are handling them. I know that for every project to be given a green light, they must have a robust social management plan. So as you're applying for your licenses, etc., part of them, the NEMA will require you to have a social management plan. So for the Tilenga project, for the Kingfisher, all of them have a social management plan. But that's from the IOC perspective, and I know that they're following it strictly. But from a government side, we're also developing a very robust, I must say, social security management plan, a strategic one, to guide us on how we're going to enforce some of these things in the sector. So, but as I know, we're doing our best, even without the plan, to ensure that the risks that are associated with people coming into, and there are very many, much more than the ones you highlighted, are well mitigated, well handled, to ensure that we sustainably produce our oil. Not only because now most of the talk now is on the environmental side, and not much of the social side is being talked about, but we're also present in that space and doing our best to ensure that we correctly handle that social side as well, to ensure that we are sustainable in the way we produce our oil. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Brian. For someone, the last question we are going to respond to, who say that they don't see us carrying out the similar workshops within the project areas. Yes, oil companies do carry out this in the oil and gas districts, and they actually do a quarterly program that runs through all the districts, the pipeline and the Albertine districts, on a quarterly where all the oil companies are working together. But also, in addition to that, we do carry out specific supplier workshops within the Albertine Graben. We had one in Hoima, June this year. We are going to Masindi in March, and we're going back to Hoima in June. But other, like the ECOP, they are doing supplier workshops within the pipeline districts together with other joint venture partners. Total and Sinok are doing in Jikure, Noya. So these activities are actually happening in addition to the quarterly community activities where they engage they engage the youth, the women, the business communities, cultural leaders, and all that. And these are always publicized on the TVs. We always have adverts on radios and TVs within the communities. So thank you very much. I still have other questions here that most probably I'll pass on and they'll be responded to in the next segment. But as of now, I would like us to go into our financing sector, which I believe is very, very vital for us, because financing is one of the major reasons why we fail to win contracts or why we fail to deliver on contracts won. So right now, I'd like to call Stambik back, Eva, to come and make your presentation.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Eva Palanka. I head oil and gas for business and commercial clients in Stanbic Bank. Today I'm not alone. I have two colleagues with me, Victoria Kayamba, if you could just wait, who's the head of oil and gas for corporate and investment bank clients, and Hamo Sinduzi, a senior relationship manager in oil and gas. Maybe just a bit as the presentation comes up, Stanbic Bank does have a vision. And their vision is Uganda is our home, we drive for growth. Obviously, oil and gas in the country is something we all want to contribute to. We've seen the numbers, and I think PAU has put up the numbers. Growth in GDP of 7%. For us, in order to be able to drive our country's growth, we'd like to be able to contribute to that 7% GDP. And how do we do that? To facilitate you, to facilitate the suppliers to be able to participate in whichever way, whether it's financing, whether it's doing collections. That is what we'd like to be able to do. But my role today here is very simple. Jessica told me to be as practical as possible. So what I'd like to do is just to share our experiences of what we've seen. As a bank in the industry, we've been preparing for this for about 8 years, just that it's kicked off now. And we've been privileged to support a few customers, or a number of customers, and we've been able to learn. And we'd just like to share a few experiences in terms of what we've seen and what has been done previously. So if you go to the first slide, we're talking about risks experienced in contract financing in this particular space. We're sharing risks seen and how we've sort of resolved these risks, or what we have seen as the mitigants. Thank you. Okay. Right. So my colleagues who spoke previously spoke in depth about the risks seen. What I'll do is just speak about this from a practical perspective. And I've just picked 3 specific risks which I think would be nice to shed some light on. So the first is contract risk. I know the council spoke in depth about detailed contract risk and how to see it. But a few of the risks we've seen, or what we've seen on our side, and I'll start with contract risk specifically. So what we've seen is there's a stringent bidding process. And after the bidding process, a contract is signed. But from the time the contract is signed to the time that the contractor is supposed to start is really short. So there's a really short time in which to mobilize the funds, and I'm sure a number of the contractors in the room will agree. So what are we saying? Or what is our response to this? Or what would the risk be? Let me just speak on the risk. The risk is that because you have such a short time to mobilize, you're not able to get the required funds to be able to plan properly for the work that you need to do, right? So what then is our response to this? You need to be able to plan early. So if indeed you're bidding and putting in a contract, you must have some sort of plan to say, okay, fine, if I'm going to do this contract, how will I plan for it? Am I going to use my own money, or am I going to source for funds? Whether it's debt, which you're going into a bank to ask for some money, or are you going to pull some sources? You have some sort of joint venture capital, or you have some investors you like to get money from. Have a plan, and then identify how you're going to get that money. I know that a number of the banks give some sort of letter of support to say in the event that this comes through, we shall support you. So it's worth pursuing such an option as you plan for that specific thing. The other thing you can do in terms of funds mobilization, and I think my colleague from PAU spoke about it in detail, look at a joint venture. A number of the joint venture companies come in with some capital and they can bring experience, but you can also bring the local content perspective. So that is something worth looking at in terms of mobilization of cash or some sort of funding for your business. The other thing which I'd like to talk about in contract risk is what we've seen is that in the contracts that are being given out now, the scope of work that you're getting or the magnitude of the contract you're getting is probably much bigger than what you've done before. So for example, let's say you've been supplying 10 trays of eggs, and now you get a contract to supply 100 trays of eggs. And now when you go to sort of mobilize. People will ask you, but how are you going to be able to do this? Or they'll probably ask you, do you have the capacity? So it's worth planning. You need to be able to have a plan to say, fine, if I've done 10 before, this is how I'm going to be able to mobilize, and have a plan in place to say, this is how I'm going to cater for the increase in the magnitude of the work that I'm going to do. It's also good to obtain clarity on the scope of work and ensure that it's properly articulated in your contract. The third one which I'd like to talk about is obviously understand your pricing, and I think the council talked about that earlier. Understand how your payment is going to come, and I'd like to touch on specifically how you invoice, right? So if you look at your contract in detail, what we've seen is sometimes the contractors don't understand that from the time you invoice, let's say the contract can say you will be paid 45 days from the time that you invoice. Now, you might not have factored that, and you've begun work and you think, okay, money will come in maybe exactly 30 days or 15 days, but then there will be some sort of gap or shortfall. So it's very important that you understand the payment terms and the payment cycle and how you're going to account for your funds within that specific time. It's also important to understand the processes. So for example, people will tell you, for us, when you invoice, we put it in a system. In this system, it has to get approval, etc. So it's worth asking, okay, how long will this take? When you put it in the system, what are the different approvals? What do you need to present before you sort of submit your invoice? So it's very important that you ask the detail of those questions. The other one I'd like to talk about is currency risk. So there's a possibility that you've got in your contract in dollars, right? But you're going to perform in Uganda shillings. Now, if you don't have a plan in terms of a plan for currency exchange, there's a possibility that when you're converting, you might make a loss as a result of the foreign exchange losses. So for example, every month you need to pay your workers, you need to buy fuel, you need to do all these different things. But remember, in your contract, you've put it in a dollar rate at a specific time. So there are different solutions that you could look at in order to mitigate that risk, depending on the magnitude of your contract. If your contract is big, you could look at hedging from a foreign exchange perspective. You lock in a foreign exchange rate. Or be proactive and say, okay, at the time I'm going to convert, I can approach different financial institutions to get a preferential rate, so that at the time I'm converting, I am not making a loss on my contract. And then it's also important that you plan for unplanned costs. So for example, in the last half of the year, we saw the prices of fuel go skyrocket out of the roof. And that did impact a lot of work. So for example, if you are doing earth clearing works, what does the impact of the increase in prices have on the machines that you're hiring? What does that have? How does that impact the vehicles that you're fueling to go into the region? So it's very important that you look at the different hidden costs in your contract. My colleague also talked about penalties. A number of the contracts are very much related to milestone achievements. In the event that you do not achieve your milestone, have you looked in your contract to see what the penalty will be? If you do not perform, what will that penalty impact have on your finances? So yes, you might have negotiated a big margin on your contract, but if your contract is being eaten into by these small penalties, inflation, foreign exchange risks, what margin will you have at the end to say, yes, I participated in oil and gas and it was profitable for me? I think at the end of the day, you need to be able to make sure, yes, you participated, but you also got some sort of benefit at the end of this thing. So it's very important to plan for the unplanned costs, and also read the fine print, or as Council said, get a lawyer to help you sort of break that down, so that at least your contract is extremely profitable in that perspective. I'll also now move to performance risk, which I think for me is the crux of the matter. At the end of the day, if you do not perform, then definitely you will not be paid. But if we look at the bigger size of the project, if you do not perform, then we are not achieving our whole goal of contributing to oil and gas in the country. if we look at the anchor clients, let's say Total, Unoc, ECOP, whoever, if you do not do your small bit, then them as a total group will not be able to deliver on their bigger project. Remember, what we're doing is fitting into the smaller puzzle of the overall project, which will be able to generate fast oil. So I think it's important to look at it from that perspective, to say you're a piece in the puzzle that will finish the whole puzzle. So on performance risk, what we've seen is that a number of the companies are newly formed. So for example, I'll form a newly formed company to undertake this venture in oil and gas. And what we've seen is that when you go to approach a financial institution, they'll tell you, okay, tell me your track record, what have you done? But of course, when you come, you're like, but I've just formed this company that is new, and I want to supply eggs. But what we're saying is what you can do is to rely on your previous work done. So for example, if you have experience and say, look, I worked in X company, and this is what I did to supply the eggs, and therefore I can demonstrate that I can perform, then that can definitely be a plus for you if you can demonstrate that you have experience having done it somewhere else, because that is essentially what track record is looking for. On performance, the other thing that I want to talk about is the joint ventures, or the complexity of working with a new team. So yes, a joint venture is a solution, forgive me, to participate in the project, right? But what we've also seen is the synchronicity of a joint venture. So for example, you've brought X person and brought Y person to work together. The question is, how are you working together to deliver? So for example, someone will tell you, first we sign our invoices in the morning. And then the other person of the joint venture will say, no, first we should sign them after 10 days and in the evening. Okay, that's a really wide example, but I think you sort of understand what I'm saying. So the question is, how do you come together to deliver on this unified project? What we've seen in some instances is because you've just come together and you've not gelled as a team, sometimes that can actually impact the work that you're doing together, and then that sort of seeps into the holistic performance of the contract. So it's very important that as you work together, as you do joint ventures, the synchronicity, the gelling of a team is very much looked into. The other piece is definitely looking at anchor requirements. So it's important, and I think PU has done the regulation quite well, but it's also important to look at the different requirements, whether it's certifications, whether it's what you're going to do for milestone delivery, whether it's the different small things, having the right kind, the right spec to enable you to participate in that region. Be able to look at the different anchor requirements to enable you continue work so that you don't reach the point of penalties, and I think I spoke about that in detail. And the last piece that I'll speak to is financial risk. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, if you do not have capacity or if you don't have the financial muscle to perform, then of course you cannot do the contract. So it's extremely important that you plan early. Understand what are your costs going to be from the beginning of the project to the end of the project. It is indeed good to work with estimates, but at least have a plan from beginning to end. I think a number of the times we've seen, yes, people are happy to get a contract. Two, you're happy to just start working because, it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. You're the first person to get this contract, etc. But it's absolutely important to plan and work with your financial partner to get this sort of plan. Now, it's also important to plan for the additional performance requirements. So I know that getting ISO certification, getting all these skills available requires some sort of funding, or you need to have planned for them. So it's important to plan for the additional expense. And lastly, the other thing which I wanted to touch on in this space is, if you do not do your projections right, or we call it, you work out some sort of working capital cycle, as I mentioned earlier. So for example, if you know that if I'm to start working today and I'm going to get paid after, let's say, 45 days, how will I be able to sustain this project in these 45 days of working? Do I have enough money? And once you've gotten those funds within that time, are you able to have the financial discipline to put it back into the business to generate for you another sort of invoice so that you're having some continued financial sustainability within the cycle of your contract? So it's extremely important that one, you factor in those gaps to say in the time that I'm going to work to get an invoice, do I have sufficient financing? Do I have sufficient funds? Number two, have I planned for the shocks in the system? Inflation, changes in foreign exchange rates, spikes in fuel, all these sorts of things. Number three, we've also seen that sometimes when let's say you've hired equipment, and if you don't pay for them, the people with equipment say, okay, we've stopped working. So what then happens to your project? So if you do not plan financially, then that means at the end of the day you won't have performed, you won't generate an invoice, you will not be paid, and the ultimate contractual work that you were supposed to do, you will not have. Does that lead to additional penalties? And it's a whole cycle all over again. And then at the end of the day, you find yourself in some sort of loss. But if you arrive having understood the financial risks, having understood what you're doing, you can definitely benefit from this project. And just to dive very quickly into what we do, because I think it's only right that if I use this platform, I might as well say what we do. We do have a range of transactional solutions, which means that one, we can offer you collections, we can do your payments for you, we can do liquidity management, and a number of the different trade services. So in order to participate in this project, we realize you might need an advance performance guarantee, which means that some of the companies, some of the anchor clients would want an advance performance guarantee or a payment guarantee from a bank. We're able to do that for you. We also have investment banking services in the events that you'd like advisory, capital markets, or strategic investment discussions. We're happy to have those with you. We also have a fully fledged global markets team. Remember earlier on I spoke about the foreign exchange loss risk. We're happy to do some sort of forwards or swaps or, commodity financing for you within this space. We also have different units. Business and commercial clients is where our local content support comes from, which is where I sit. We're also able to support you for your staff, to be able to give them, accounts. We realize that majority of the workers in the oil and gas space want some form of account to be able to have their funds, pay for utilities, etc. We've got that available for you. And then obviously, lastly, we realize insurance is a must, especially for the people working in the fields. We're saying we have that for you. And I'm happy to share that in detail when we finish. But before we go to the end, you've probably sat next to someone and you might think you might not talk to them, but I'd like us to do a small practical exercise. So you're going to have to talk to your neighbor. You did not just listen to me for nothing. And you also didn't listen to the previous speakers for nothing. So we're going to do a very small, short exercise. If you could just go to the very last slide of the presentation, I think it has disappeared. It's a case study. And on your different tables, I'm just going to read out a very brief case study, and I'd like us to discuss amongst ourselves in the table. And after that, I'll pick about 5 people to just share their views. So this practical experience is supposed to help us discuss here, and as a result of that, we will have learned what we're doing. So very quickly, congratulations to you, each of you on your table. You've just won a subcontract. Now remember, I think my colleague earlier defined what subcontract is. They talked about tier 1 and tier 2. So in detail, you're a tier 2 contractor, you've won a contract from a tier 1 contractor. So you've won a contract to provide X services to the tier 1 contractor under the ECO project. The value of your contract is $1 million. The start date of the contract is 23rd December 2022, just before Christmas. But you've just won the contract today, 23rd of November 2022. You will be paid 30 days from the submission of your invoice, and all the other terms and conditions apply. On failure to achieve these terms and conditions, you'll have a penalty fee. So, Council, I know there are a lot of things missing there, but yeah. So, on your different groups, what key things would you look out for as you read this contract, and how would you prepare? Now, your time starts now. You have exactly 5 minutes to discuss on your tables, after which I will select 5 people to give us feedback. Please, use as much as wisdom as you need. If there are things that are not there, be that clever one and say, I would also consider this, I would consider this. Your time starts now. Discuss. Today you've not had Jessica's breakfast for free. You will learn.
Happening right now at the Sheraton Kampala Hotel is that was a presentation from Stanbic Bank, and well, with live examples as well. You've seen how they've been able to support the different suppliers they have worked with. Many they've built the confidence to be able to provide the necessary support that is needed, especially financial support. Still emphasizing things like insurance. Clearly, you will not be in position to run away from it this time around, but that is how it all went. And in 5 minutes, we will be coming back with what the groups would have come up with. But the question was, what would you walk away from in a contract? And what would be your contribution as well? Well, I'm looking forward to hearing from the different groups that have been created and what they would walk away from. What would be ideally what would be the deal breaker? Why you reach a point and you're like, okay, I think this deal, I cannot sign this contract. I would rather walk away regardless of how much I'm going to be earning from this contract. But also, we are expecting a presentation from Equity Bank, and it's going to be about access to financing with practical demonstrations as well, as we are nearing the closure of the workshop. So make sure that you stay with us, because we are going to be giving you all the details of what would have transpired. In case you caught us a bit late, don't forget to tune in tonight. In our bulletin, we'll be giving you all the details of everything that would have transpired. But if you've been with us since morning, you are doing such a wonderful job. Thank you for staying with us. We're getting to a very short break. When we come back, we'll be taking you straight to Sheraton.